So basically, Culture Shock is a 10-day event series that the Student Society at Mcgill, so the SMU and Qpirg Mcgill put together, along with the help and support of other groups on campus and off campus. So it's an event series that lasts 10 days, where for 10 days we run panels, workshops, art exhibitions and talks to talk about issues that affect indigenous communities, people of color, and refugees, and so basically all those issues where we talk about racism and the Canadian immigration system and how all those structures affect the life of those communities. So we try to move quite a bit of our programming this year is about indigenous communities. So our opening panel that just happened was about the incarceration system and indigenous communities. On Friday, October 11th, we have a workshop on indigenous feminisms and decolonizing indigenous queer identity. And then we also have a very interesting workshop which is on Tuesday the 15th, which is at 6 p.m. at Café L'Artère, 7000 Avenue du Parc, which is about building a solidarity city. So the Solidarity City is an initiative of solidarity across borders that came up with a declaration about how that different in order for Montreal to be a cité sans frontières, so to be a solidarity city, we should be able to give all the rights and privileges to people without asking them about their resident status. So a lot of groups and companies signed on this declaration. So we're having a workshop to discuss how did they implement this? How did they hire somebody without a status? So we're discussing the various ways in which we can make Montreal a solidarity city. So that's an interesting event as well. There will also be an art exhibition, which will also be at Café L'Artère, 7000 Avenue du Parc. And that's from October 15th till October 20th. And it features the work of Theodore Harris, who's a black collagist who lives in Philadelphia, who does collage work that speaks about the American state and the different ways in which race is manipulated through different structures. And Theodore Harris is also giving our keynote, which will be at Café L'Artère as well, on Friday, October 18th, and the vernissage is at 7 p.m. The talk is at 8 p.m. They relate in multiple ways. The reason why we try to put them together is because when we speak of a decolonizing project and decolonization, you could speak about it specifically in terms of indigenous communities and First Peoples in Canada, but then at the same time immigrants are all the new settlers and the newcomers. So the idea is to look at the various ways in which those intersect, while assuming that we are going with the assumption, well, the real assumption, it's not just an assumption, but looking at the structure as inherently a racist structure. So it affects different kinds of communities of color in different ways, and it speaks to each other and intersects through different ways. So the idea by having a programming that touches on all those issues is to be able to see how they all speak to each other, and politically, how can we move forward from there? How can we, as young students, activists, community members, how can we build something more concrete around it, but by looking at how the structures plays into, how the different state structures affect all those communities differently. I guess many of us, we wanted the opening panel to be focusing on issues that touch the First Peoples, the indigenous communities of Canada. That was important for us. And then with time, we were thinking of the directions, the form this could take, and then we thought, why not incarceration and the incarceration system? Because that's something that's less talked about. We really wanted to have the perspective of somebody who's been incarcerated, somebody who works with people who have been incarcerated, and get those different perspectives in terms of what's the impact for indigenous communities, specifically indigenous women who are incarcerated. So in terms of today's content, I think there was just so much to take back, really, in terms of what Jessica Danforth talked about. I thought was interesting in terms of not thinking of us as decolonizing, but as indigenizing, for example. I thought that was something that those are like, I feel there were so many tools that for us, community groups, student groups, activists, that we can actually take from this. And then in terms of how we integrate it now in terms of our organizing, like I'm really excited about like culture shock being over, going to our next meeting and saying, okay, what do we take from this experience? How do we move on from there? And how do we organize? And in terms of being in touch with those people, for sure, like that's like a link that we have now, yeah.